Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hello, Anush, Anisha, Sumaira, Yusra. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we are going to start ACCA paper, which is Management Accounting paper. Let's have a look at ACCA different parts and ACCA's different papers and their relation. Okay. Students, can you see that slides is being shared with you or not? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. ACCA consists of three parts. The first one you can see that is applied accounting, and second one is applied skills, and the third one is strategic professional. You can see that our paper, which is management accounting paper, this one is an applied knowledge. Sorry. If you see the rationale or relation of this paper, the knowledge that you will gain in this paper is linked to next paper of applied skills, which is performance management. Performance management paper is almost 40% based on management accounting paper. And then the performance management paper is also linked with strategic professional paper, which is first one is strategic business leaders. And second is the advancement of performance management paper, which is advanced performance management. Means this paper is not only important for you to pass your applied knowledge, but also linked to applied skills paper, which is performance management, and one of the essential papers of strategic professional papers, which is strategic business leader, and also one of the optional papers, which is advanced performance management paper. Okay, students, if you see the number of chapters in this paper, there are total 17 chapters according to Kaplan study text. We will follow Kaplan study text and Kaplan exam kit that will be shared with you later in your WhatsApp group. The first chapter that you can see is the accounting for management. As the paper is management accounting, we will discuss later what is management accounting, what are the differences with financial accounting and other papers. The second chapter is related to sources of data and analyzing data. In this chapter, we will discuss what is data, what are the sources of data, how can we analyze the data. There is also a concept of big data, which is very familiar these days. Okay, the third chapter is of presenting information. We will start from fourth chapter, which is cost classification. This chapter will be started later, inshallah. The fifth chapter is related to accounting for materials. And the next chapter is accounting for labor. In this chapter, we will learn how can we calculate the cost related to human. The next chapter is accounting for overheads. Chapter number 8 is absorption and marginal costing. Chapter number 9, we will cover job costing, batch costing, and process costing. I'm not discussing them in detail because you might not know about overheads right now. You might not know what is job, what is batch. That's why I'm not going in details. Later we would be able to discuss the details once we covered 1 or 2 chapters. There is chapter number 10, which is related to service costing and operation costing. Chapter number 11 is related to discuss different alternative costing techniques. The costing techniques that are little advanced. Most of the traditional costing techniques have little problems. That's why they introduced different costing techniques. Then in chapter 12, we will learn how can we forecast our company's sales, our company's cost, means these are the future related activities. Chapter number 13 is related to budgeting. How can we set budget for our organizations? Chapter number 14 is also related to budgeting, but it is capital budgeting. Means whenever we have to decide whether to invest in non-current asset or not, we will first have to evaluate it. This chapter is also called investment appraisal. Chapter number 15, in this chapter, we will discuss whether the company that had set its targets met or not. Means we will calculate in this chapter different types of variances. These variances would be the basic variances, while advanced variances will be covered in next paper, which is performance management paper F5. Chapter number 16 is related to performance measurement. How can we measure the performance of different companies by using different ratios? And the last chapter is related to spreadsheet, as I'll try to work more and more on spreadsheets during the lectures, during the coverage of different chapters. That's why most of the ideas, most of the formulas you will learn during the coverage of the first 16 chapters. So when we will move on to the next chapter, last chapter, which is spreadsheet, we will have already covered most of the formulas or most of the techniques. So guys, these are the different chapters that we'll cover in this paper, inshallah. If we discuss the examination pattern, you can see that the paper time, total allowed time is 2 hours. The paper is demand based and you can attempt it in any month. Total paper allowed time is of 2 hours. If you see this, there would be 2 sections in this paper, section A and section B. In section A, there would be 35 2 marks objective questions. These can be in the form of multiple choice questions, multiple task questions, fill in the blanks, etc., etc. And in section B, there would be 3 10 marks multitask questions. In multitask questions, students will be given a scenario, and on the basis of that scenario, there would be 5 different objective test questions. Each multiple task question consists of 10 marks. So 3 multiple task questions will be marked as 30. So your paper will be 100 marks. All questions will be compulsory and passing percentage is 50%. For section B, as we covered in this slide, there are total 17 chapters. Section B style question can come from forecasting techniques. Multiple task question can be from budgeting area. There are 2 budgeting areas, capital budgeting and normal budgeting. Multiple task question can be from standard costing, which is related to variances. And multiple task question can be from this chapter, which is performance measurement. So these 4 to 5 chapters are most important areas of this paper. Although other areas are also important because multiple task questions can come from any chapter, from any area. We cannot leave any area, but our more focus would be on these chapters because these are most important chapters. Almost 40% of paper will come from these chapters. Okay, students, you can ask any question either by typing your question in chat box or you unmuting your mic and can ask any question. Do you have any question? Okay, thank you. Okay, students, as we discussed that there would be 35 objective questions. Now we are going to discuss the style of objective questions. There can be multiple choice questions. Multiple choice questions. Okay. In these sort of questions, we will be given 4 options or a list of options, and we have to click on one option. Second is little trickier. Okay, sorry. Okay, the next area is multiple response questions. In multiple response questions, we will be given different options and we have to select more than one response from the options provided. Next style of question can be multiple response matching. There would be different statements and we have to match different statements with their concepts. The next style of question can be number entry, where we have to calculate the answer, number, and we have to fill in blank. These sort of questions can come in form of objective style questions. Next, we are going to discuss pass rates of F2 paper. You can see that the averages are between 64% to 72%. If we take the average, that will be around 68%. It means every 2 students pass this paper. Only one student failed the paper. So there are higher chances of getting success in this paper. Okay. Now we are moving to discuss the basic concepts, which is cost and management accounting and financial accounting. First of all, we are going to discuss what is cost accounting and why is it called management accounting? Okay, students, cost accounting basically a system for what? To calculate the cost, which is the most important thing in organizations. Because if any organization would not know the cost of their products, then the organization won't be able to add the profit in that or set the selling price for that product. So organizations need a system that can calculate the cost of the products and that enable them to set the selling prices of their products. So the cost accounting basically a system for recording data and producing information about costs of the products produced by the organization, or even if there is any service organization, organizations would calculate the cost of services it provides. So what is cost accounting? Cost accounting is a system for recording data related to what? Related to the cost incurred. First of all, I think we should discuss what is cost. Do anybody know what is cost? Okay, cost is basically the amount of resources consumed. Cost is basically the amount of resources consumed. Resources can be in the form of material, in the form of labor, or in the form of expenses. We will discuss later what is material cost, what is labor cost, what are expenses. So the cost of the product can be the material used to produce the product or the labor who produced this product or unit, how much amount we have paid to that labor, and what amount of electricity cost, what amount of rent cost, etc., the other costs that are incurred to produce the product. Okay, students, the next system is financial accounting. Basically, financial accounting is a system of recording financial transactions of a business. Let's discuss a few basic concepts. Let's say, what is data? Data is raw form of facts and figures. And what is information? Information is when this data is processed, the processed form of data is called information. Means when we collect data in raw form, when that form of facts and figures does not have any meanings, when this form of facts and figures cannot be used by management, just like the raw material, before processing the raw material, this cannot be called a product and this cannot be used by any organization or any individual. Data is also the form of just facts and figures, is the raw form of facts and figures. But when this data is arranged, when this data is processed, the processed form of data is called information. Means whenever we want to convert the data into information, we will first have to arrange it, or we will first have to process it, so that the management can use it for their decision making, for their planning, for their performance evaluation, or other tasks. If we talk about data, the data has two main types or two main sources. The first one is called primary data, and the second type or second source is called secondary data. What is the difference between primary data and secondary data? Primary data is basically the data that is collected for the first time and is being used for the first time. Means we can say it as first hand data is called primary data. And secondary data, when someone has already used the primary data and we are using the data to solve our problem, then that primary data that was primary data for someone else, this data will become secondary data for the other organization. Means if we are using the data collected by someone else, then this data will be called secondary data. Means we can say that secondary data is second-hand data. One data can be primary data for one organization who collected that data through research, through service. But this data can be called a secondary data for the second organization who is using it for the second time. If we talk about information, the information can be of two types. It can be a financial information, or it can be a non-financial information. Okay, guys. Anyone knows the difference between financial information or non-financial information? Anyone? Okay. Financial information is the information expressed in monetary form. Is called financial information. Like we have information that cost per unit of any product is, let's say, $100. The dollar sign shows that information is in monetary form. So this information, which is cost per unit is equal to $100, this information would be called financial information. Okay. If the information is not expressed in monetary form, then the information will be called non-financial information. The information which is not expressed in monetary form, this information will be called non-financial information. Let's say number of students in class equal to, let's say, 20. As there is no monetary sign used in this information, which is number of students in class, so this information will be classed as non-financial information. Here we covered a few concepts, which is first one was data. What is data? Data is the raw form of facts and figures. And when this data is processed, the processed form of data is called information. The second concept that we covered is the different sources or different types of data. We discussed that there are two main sources of data. The first one is primary data, and the second one is secondary data. If any organization will collect data through surveys and research to solve their problem, this data would be called or would be treated as or would be segregated as primary data, or we can also call it primary source of data. And what is secondary data? If any organization tries to solve their problem by using the data collected someone else, then this data would be treated as secondary data. Then we covered the different types of information, which is financial information and non-financial information. Financial information is the information expressed in monetary form, like cost per unit equal to $100, rate per hour of an employee is $300 per hour, etc., etc. This information will be treated as financial information, and the information which is not expressed in monetary form is called non-financial information. Okay, students. Now we can better understand what is financial accounting. Financial accounting is basically a system of recording just the financial transactions of a business. Means only to record those transactions which are expressed in monetary form. What is the purpose of financial accounting? The purpose of financial accounting is to produce financial statements, to provide information mainly to external users or external to the organization users. Cost accounting is a system of costing, means to calculate the cost of products produced. And financial accounting is just a system of recording the financial transactions of a business. If we look it in detail, the differences between management accounting and financial accounting, basically management accounting is the paper that we have started today. We are studying now. And the financial accounting is basically the paper that will be covered in your paper F3. This management accounting is paper F2, second paper of applied knowledge. And financial accounting is the third paper of applied knowledge of your ACCA. The first difference is the information mainly produced for in management accounting. This information is mainly produced for internal use, means the system that will be used by management of an organization, definitely to fulfill their responsibilities, to fulfill their tasks, the information that will be used by management or the system that will be used by management. But the financial accounting is basically have the external use, means this information, the information produced through financial accounting is mainly for use of external users, like shareholders, like payables, like customers, like banks, like government, like lenders, etc., etc. The second difference is the purpose of information. What is the purpose of information produced in management accounting? And what is the purpose of information produced in financial accounting? Mainly, the purpose of information produced in management accounting is to aid management in planning, is to aid management in controlling, and to aid management in decision making. Decision making means to decide which products should be produced, which products should not be produced, which products we should discontinue, which new products should we launch. Okay. While the purpose of information produced in financial accounting is to record the financial performance of a business, to assess whether the business earned a profit during the period or a loss, the amount of assets that the company has generated over its life, how many liabilities the business have, the amount of capital, etc., etc. What are the legal requirements? Is management accounting is a legal requirement or not? No. There is no legal requirement to produce the management accounts. But the financial accounting is the legal requirement of all limited companies, means listed companies, limited liability companies, all the businesses, all the limited liabilities companies must produce financial accounts. Okay, next thing is the format. What is the difference of format in management accounting and financial accounting? As there is no legal requirement even to produce the management accounts, so their format will be decided only by the management. The format that the organization or management will think that it will be useful, it will prepare the management accounts in that format. But for financial accounting, international accounting standards or international financial reporting standards will give us the format of different types of financial accounts. Next is the nature of information. In management accounting, we record both types of information that can be financial and non-financial. But the financial accounting system will only record the financial transactions of a business. In management accounting, we can record the financial information if it is relevant to management for decision making or for planning or for performance evaluation. While in financial accounting, as we discussed, that financial accounting is basically a system of recording only financial transactions of a business. So the nature of the information would be mostly financial in financial accounting. Okay, the next thing is the time period. In management accounting, we would not only record the historic or past information. This management accounting is also future related, means we can also forecast for future. In management accounting, management can also set budgets for their organization, which is also future related. While in financial accounting, we do not forecast. Yes, we provide the historic information to shareholders. They can forecast the performance of the business, but we do not provide any future related information to shareholders or to the users of financial statements. We can forecast on the basis of financial accounts, but the management or the financial accounting system itself would not carry any future related information. This is the main difference between management accounting and financial accounting. The differences are in the form of information produced, in the form of purpose of information, in the form of legal requirement, in the form of formats, in the form of nature of information, and the time period. If you have any question related to this slide, you can unmute your mic and can ask question, or either you can type your questions in chat box. Do you have any question? Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, students, now formally we are going to start the third chapter of Kaplan exam kit. Which is cost classification. First of all, we will discuss the basic things, and then we will move on to the next little advanced concept. The first thing is cost classification. Okay. What is cost? What is cost? Okay. Try to write down all the concepts that I'm trying to explain in this spreadsheet. What is cost? The amount of resources consumed in purchasing a product or producing a product. Here we write resources. What does meanings of resources? Which type of resources organization consume in producing a product? The first one can be material. Material. What is the material cost? The cost of parts and components used to produce a product. Cost of parts and components used to produce a product. If we see the physical appearance of any product, the physical appearance is due to the parts and components. Material cost can include the purchase price, means the price paid to supplier in exchange of material. When this material will come to organization, the organization will need to store it, will need to hold it. So the next material cost can be in the form of holding cost. And whenever organization will order the material to supplier, it will incur the transportation cost. So the next material cost component can be the ordering cost. This is the cost of one resource, which is material. Okay. The next resource that can be used to produce a product is the labor cost. What is labor cost? Basically, in organizations, the amount paid to employees. We can also say it as human related cost. Let's say if a product is produced by using number of labor hours equal to, let's say, 2 hours, and we pay organization the labor, the rate per hour equal to, let's say, $50 per hour, then the labor cost will be, labor cost per unit will be equal to 2 multiplied by 50 equal to 100. 100 is the labor cost that is incurred to produce 1 unit of product. Okay. The third amount type of resource that can be used is in the form of any expense. First of all, let's discuss what is expense. We have understand the cost of labor, the cost of material. Now we are going to cover the concept of expense. What is expense? Expense basically is a residual category, means the costs that are not related to material or labor. Then the remaining costs will be categorized as or treated as expense cost, like cost of rent, cost of rent. Cost of rent or rent cost is neither related to material, means cost of rent is not a material cost, nor even labor cost, means not related to human resources. Then this cost will be treated as rent cost. The next cost that can be categorized as expense is electricity cost. Electricity cost is also not related to material, not related to labor, so will be categorized as expense. There are 3 types of resources that organization consume in producing a product. The cost can be in the form of material, can be in the form of labor, or it can be an expense. There are so many other types of expenses, but I'm not discussing it right now. Okay, students. The first concept is, what is cost? All expenses carried out to make 1 unit of a product is called a cost of that unit. Means the amount of resources consumed. If the organization consumed the resources of, let's say, material cost is $100, labor cost of, let's say, $50 per unit, and expenses of $20 per unit, then how much amount of resources the organization consumed in producing 1 unit is 100 plus 50 plus 20 equal to 170. 170 is the cost okay. Anisha, I guess you asked a question, amount of resources consumed. Am I right? Okay, thank you. Okay. I thought that you asked any question. Okay, the next concept is, what is cost unit? A cost unit is a unit of product or service to which cost is attached. We can simply say it as the unit of product or service for any organization is called a cost object. Like if an organization is producing chairs, then the chair would be a cost unit for that organization, because chair is a unit of product for them. Okay, if an organization is producing tables, then the table would be a unit of product. So table would be treated as cost unit. Even marker can be a cost unit. A bike can be a cost unit. A watch can be a cost unit. Means anything that the organization is producing, the unit of product or service would be treated as cost unit. Okay. For an automobile sector, what should be the cost per unit for automobile sector? You can type your answer in chat box. For an automobile sector or for an automobile company, what can be the cost per unit for a car manufacturing company? Let's see who can answer this question. Okay. Cost of spare parts. Yes, it can be. If the company is producing spare parts and the end product is spare parts, then spare parts can be a cost unit. Not cost of spare parts, but spare parts itself. Okay, machinery, no, it cannot be machinery. What is the end product of automobile sector? What is the end product of a car manufacturing company? Yes, car itself would be treated as a cost unit. Okay. Okay. My next question is, if a company is producing laptops or manufacturing laptops, what would be the cost per unit for a company producing laptops? Let's see who can answer it. Okay. Charger? No, charger. No, charger. Charger is not. Yes, laptop itself. Good, Sumera. As the end product for the laptop company is laptops, so the cost per unit, the cost unit would be laptop. If a company is producing mobiles, then mobile is the unit of product for that company. Then cost unit would be mobile. Cost unit is the commodity, is the product. Okay, not the cost related to that commodity or that product. Okay, next is cost per unit. Okay, cost per unit. What is cost per unit? The cost of 1 unit of a product is called cost per unit. Means we can say it as the amount of resources consumed in producing 1 unit of product. Okay. We discussed earlier that a chair manufacturing company would have a cost unit of chair. If the cost to produce 1 chair is $100, then the cost per unit would be $100. In cost unit, we do not use any monetary sign because cost unit is just a unit of product. But when we answer the cost per unit, the cost per unit will be in monetary form, like $100, $200, just like this one, where we calculated the cost per unit of 170. This, if the 170 is the cost of a single cost unit, then 170 is the cost per unit. Means the cost related to one unit is called cost per unit. Okay, my question is, if the total cost is let's say 10,000, and in this total cost we produced how many units? Let's say we produced number of units of 100. What would be the cost per unit? Type your answer in chat box. Okay, total cost equal to 10,000. Cost per unit is 100. So the cost per unit would be 10,000 divided by number of units, which is 100. So the cost per unit would be 100. Yes, good. All right. Next concept is cost center. What is cost center? We have covered the concepts of what is cost unit, cost per unit, and now we are moving on to cover the next concept, which is cost center. Basically, cost center is any part of organization for which we only accumulate the data related to costs, and the manager of that part of organization or that center is responsible for costs only. Okay, let's say we have a production department in our organization. Let's say we have a production department in our organization. So production department is a department that is not earning any amount of income or revenue. Production department will only use resources in the form of material, in the form of labor, or in the form of expenses, and will produce the units, and that units or finished goods will then be sold out to customers to earn the revenue. But in production department, we will only incur costs, and the department or service location or a function where we only accumulate the data related to cost is called a cost center. Okay, we can cover this concept as first thing to discuss is the responsibility accounting. First, we will understand what is the responsibility accounting. What is the system of responsibility accounting? Responsibility accounting is a system of dividing organization into different parts and each part is the responsibility of a single manager. Okay. Means this is the system where we divide our organization into different parts, and each part will be under the responsibility of a manager. This system is called responsibility accounting. Okay, the parts in which the organization is divided, let's say we have divided our organization into 6 parts or 7 parts or 8 parts, and we appointed 8 managers, 7 managers, who are each of them are responsible for their departments. Each part of organization will be called a responsibility center. So what is responsibility center? The parts in which the organization is divided. Each part will be called a responsibility center. Let's say we divided our organization into, let's say there was a machining department where machines are working. There is an assembly department where we assemble the different parts of the product. And then there is, let's say, a finishing department where the products will be converted into complete finished goods. And there is, let's say, a sales department. For machinery department, there would be a manager. Let's say manager A is responsible for the performance of machinery department. Manager B would be responsible for the assembly department, and manager C would be responsible for the finishing department, and for sales department, the responsibility would be of any, let's say, sales manager. In which parts we have divided the organization? We divided the organization into machinery department, assembly department, finishing department, sales department, and each area is under the responsibility of a single manager. The system in which we divided our organization into different parts and each part is the responsibility of a single manager, this system is called responsibility accounting. Okay. In which parts we have divided the organization? We divided the organization into machining part, assembly department, finishing department, sales department. These individual parts would be called our responsibility centers. These are the centers in which the organization is divided. Okay, these are two different things. Responsibility accounting is basically a system in which we divide our organization into identical or individual parts, and each area is the responsibility of a single manager. Means we appoint a manager to assess the performance of that department. This system is called responsibility accounting system, and the parts in which the organization is divided would be called responsibility centers. Okay, then what is cost center? The departments that only incurs cost and whose managers are only responsible for cost. Let's say that for machining department, we ask our manager A to perform all tasks in machining department in $10,000. Now, this is the responsibility of manager A to perform all tasks in machining department under $10,000. If the manager used the resources greater than $10,000, let's say he used the resources of $10,500 manager A would be responsible to explain the reasons for using this 500 extra amount. Okay, next is assembly department. In assembly department, we also incur costs, and assembly department's manager is also responsible for costs. And in assembly department, we will gather the data related to costs. This department would also be treated as cost center. In machining department, this is also a department where we consume resources or we incur cost. And finishing department's manager is also responsible for cost. Then we can also say that machining department is also a cost center. Now we can say that there are three departments in which only costs will incur and their manager would be responsible for cost. There are three cost centers, but in sales department's manager is not given targets in terms of cost, rather he is given targets in terms of either sales units, means he will be given a target of selling, let's say 1000 units in 1 year or 1 month or so, or he might be given target in terms of sales income or sales revenue. Let's say he is given a target of sales of $10,000. So in sales department, we do not incur costs, we incur or we earn revenues, and its manager would not be responsible for cost, but would be responsible to achieve these sort of targets. So we can say that the sales department is not our cost center. Rather, we can say it as that this center is a revenue center or revenue department. Okay, students. If the concepts of responsibility accounting and responsibility centers are clear, then please write in chat box so that we can move on to next chapter, next concept. Thank you. Thank you, Sumera. Okay, next is cost object. What is cost object? Okay, cost object is anything in relation to which cost is ascertained or cost is gathered. This will be treated as cost object. If we are gathering the cost related to any department, then that department would be treated as cost object. If we are calculating the cost for any function, then that function would be treated as cost object. Means anything for which we need to calculate the amount of resources consumed, then that thing will become our cost object. A cost object is any activity or item for which a separate measurement of cost is desired. It could be a cost unit, okay, or a cost center. Means anything in relation to which cost is ascertained is called cost object. Okay. Next is cost classification. What is cost classification? Cost classification means segregation or division of cost into groups, into different groups. We will discuss later in which groups we can segregate our cost. Only cost classification. What is cost classification? Cost classification is basically segregation or division or grouping of cost on similar activities basis. We can classify our cost in different ways that we will cover later in this chapter. Okay, what is the aim of cost classification? Why do we classify our costs? What is the aim? The aim is basically to find out the costs incurred in production of a cost unit. Means we need to calculate the cost of the product that we are producing. This is the main aim of cost classification, because without doing any classification of cost, we won't be able to calculate the cost incurred on producing one unit. The cost of producing one unit. Why is it necessary to calculate the cost of one unit? Because the management have to set the selling price. Because if we don't know about the cost, let's say we don't know about the cost of laptop, then we cannot set its selling price. If we set the selling price, then we even don't know whether we are incurring a loss or we are earning any amount of profit. But if we know the cost, let's say we are given with cost of 1,000. So if we know that the cost of producing one unit is 1,000, then we can simply set the selling price by adding profit in it. Profit is, let's say we want to earn a profit of 200, then what would be its selling price? Cost 1,000 plus profit of 200, we would set the selling price of our product at 1,200. Means calculation of cost would help management to set the selling price of their product. The second purpose or second reason for cost classification is decision making. Management have to decide which products number of units would be produced higher or lower, or which product should be produced or which product should not be produced, or which activity should be performed or which activity should not be performed. Decision making is basically choosing between alternatives. If management has 2 to 3 alternatives and management have to choose among them, it means management is making a decision. And the next aim of cost classification is management have to plan their activities and to control the activities. Planning and control is the next aim of cost classification or even costing. Okay, next we are moving on to different types of cost classification. The cost incurred in an organization can be divided in a number of ways, like the cost can be classified by elements, which we discussed earlier, that we can classify our cost into material cost, in labor cost, or it can be an expense. The cost related to parts and components is called material cost. The cost paid to employees or labor who are producing the number of units or who are working in organization is called labor cost. And expense is the residual category, means the cost which is not under the classification of material or labor will be treated under the category of expense. Next cost classification is very interesting, which is cost classification by behavior. The behavior cost classification by behavior means how the cost will behave with the changes in number of units. Means how the cost will behave if we are producing higher number of units, whether the cost will vary, whether the cost will remain fixed, whether the cost will be a semi-variable cost or it can be a step fixed cost. Then we will classify our cost by nature, which is cost can be a direct cost or indirect cost. And the last, we will classify our cost by function, means the cost can be manufacturing related, or the cost can be other than manufacturing. Means cost can be research and development cost, cost can be selling and distribution cost, cost can be administration related cost, means the cost other than manufacturing. Okay, the first classification is the same that we have discussed earlier: material cost, labor cost, and expense. But we are moving on to other classification, which is cost classification by behavior. Okay. The first one is cost classification by behavior is variable cost. As the name suggests, that the cost will vary in total with the number of units. Variable cost per unit. It is assumed that the variable cost per unit remains constant. Remains constant means variable cost per unit will not change with the changes in number of units. Okay, students, let's say in first column, there are number of units. In the second column is the variable cost per unit. And in third column, we will calculate the total cost. Okay. Number of units can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. But the variable cost per unit, as we discussed, that variable cost per unit will remain constant. We are assuming that variable cost per unit is equal to, let's say, 50. So if we will produce 1 unit, the variable cost per unit will be 50. If we will produce 2 units, still variable cost per unit will remain at 50. For 3 units per unit 50, 4 units per unit 50. For at any level of activity, the variable cost per unit will remain constant, which is 50. How can we calculate the total cost? Total cost is calculated as cost per unit, which is 50, multiply by number of units. Okay. When the first unit will be produced, variable cost per unit is 50. The number of units are 1. So the total cost will be 50. Okay. For 2 units, variable cost per unit is 50. Multiply by there are 2 units. So the total cost will become 100. Similarly, we can calculate the cost for rest of number of units by just copying this formula and applying this formula on the other cells. You can see that for 1 unit, cost is 50. For 2 units, cost is 100. For 3 units, cost is 150, and so on. Means as the number of units are increasing, the total cost is also increasing. Means the cost is varying with the changes in number of units. Number of units are increasing, total cost is increasing. If the number of units are decreasing, the total cost is also decreasing. So the variable cost, what is variable cost? Now we can see a cost that varies in total with the change in activity level. That varies in total with the change in activity level, but remains constant per unit, is called a variable cost. Examples can be material purchased, workers paid per unit, royalty paid per unit. Okay. If we draw its chart, let's draw its chart for per unit and for total. Select the data in table for which we want to draw a chart. This skill is related to your spreadsheet chapter, which is the last chapter. As I said earlier, that when we will be covering the first chapters, we will try to develop the skills of spreadsheet. Okay. I have selected the data for which I want to draw a chart. You can see that I have selected the data for units and variable cost per unit. When the data is selected, okay, go on insert tab. Okay, there are recommended charts. You can see recommended charts. Click on it. There are so many recommended charts, and select the chart type of chart that you want to insert or draw. I am selecting this. So this is the chart. If I want to change its design or format, there are different designs and formats. I will only click on any design. This chart will show that design. We can see that as the variable cost per unit is constant, with the changes in a number of units, the variable cost per unit is constant. For 1 unit, it is 50. For 2 units, it is again 50. For 3 units, 50, and so on. Means for per unit variable cost, the line is parallel to x-axis. This is x-axis. Horizontal axis is called x-axis, while the vertical axis is called y-axis. Along x-axis, there are number of units, and along y-axis, there are costs. As we can see that at different number of units are changing, but the cost per unit is not changing. It is fixed. Per unit is fixed. Which cost remains per unit fixed is variable cost, because variable cost varies in total, but it remains constant per unit. This is the chart for variable cost per unit. Okay, if we want to draw the chart for total cost, we can draw it as, first of all, we will select the column for number of units, and then with control option, we will select the next column related to total cost. When the columns are selected, we will go on the insert tab, recommended charts, and can draw a chart. This is the chart for total cost. We can see that at 0 level of activity, total cost would be 0. For 1 unit, the total cost is 50. For 2 units, total cost is 100. For 3 units, total cost is 150, and so on. Means this line is will start from origin or almost origin, and it will be a straight line. Why it would be a straight line? Because per unit value is constant. Okay, students, this is the variable cost, which is the first cost. If it is clear, then leave a comment in chat box. Clear? Good. Clear for me. Good. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Great. Great. Thank you. Okay. Next type of cost is fixed cost. What is fixed cost? As the name suggests, that the total cost is fixed for any period. Means the cost will not change with the changes in level of activity or changes in number of units. Okay, a cost that remains fixed in total with the changes in activity level, like rent cost. Rent cost will not change even if we will not produce any unit. Let's say rent cost is, okay, let's say rent cost is equal to $10,000. This rent cost will not change even if we are not producing 0 unit. Even if we are producing 1 unit, if we are producing 2 units and so on, irrespective of the number of units produced, the total cost will not change. Means for 0 unit, it will be 10,000. For if we are producing 1 unit, it will be 10,000. If we are producing 2 units, it will be 10,000. 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, 1,000 units, 2,000 units, 10,000 units, irrespective of the number of units produced, the total cost will not change. This cost will remain fixed, irrespective of the level of activity, irrespective of the number of units produced. Okay, let's see its pattern or behavior. First is total cost, and the next column will be cost per unit. Okay, what is the total cost? Total cost is 10,000. Sorry, 10,000. If we will produce 1 unit, then the total cost will remain 1,000. We can drag this value for the rest of number of units. 1,000. Okay. What will be the cost per unit? Definitely, if we are not producing any unit, we cannot calculate the cost per unit. It will give us infinity answer. If we will produce 1 unit, then the cost per unit will be equal to total cost. Okay. Whenever we will use formula or calculation in any cell, we will start it from equal to. Equal to the value in this cell, which is the total cost, divided by total number of units. This will give us the cost per unit, which is 10,000. Okay, for next value, which is cost per unit, total cost is 10,000 divided by number of units are 2. So the cost per unit will be equal to 5,000. I can copy this formula for rest of cells. This is the cost per unit. We can see the pattern that total cost for all level of activity is same. Okay, variable cost per unit was same for all level of activity. That was per unit value same. But in this case, total cost will remain constant for all level of activities. Variable cost per unit remains constant for all level of activities, while fixed cost remains fixed in total, irrespective of level of activity. But as the number of units are increasing, the fixed cost per unit starts decreasing. The fixed cost per unit will be diluted with the increase in the number of units. As we can see that for first unit, the cost per unit is 10,000. For second unit, when we are producing 2 units, the cost per unit is 5,000. For 3, it is tetra 3.33. For 5 units, it comes down to 2,000. We can also insert its charts for total cost. Select the columns, insert chart, and this is the chart. We can see for all level of activities, total cost is at 10,000. Why is it 10,000? Because it is a fixed cost. It will not change with the changes in level of activity. Okay. If we draw its chart for per unit values with control function, it will be like as go to insert recommended charts, and let's say this is the chart. This is the chart for fixed cost per unit. As the number of units are increasing, the cost per unit is decreasing. Means there is an inverse relationship between number of units and cost per unit. This is the fixed cost. Okay, guys. Is this concept clear for fixed cost? Can you hear me? Yes, good. Other students, please let me know if the concept for fixed cost and its charts are clear. Clear. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next, segregation or type cost classification by behavior. There are 4 types of costs under cost classification by behavior. The first one was variable cost. Second one is fixed cost. And now we are moving on to the next type, which is semi-variable cost. This is also under cost classification by behavior. What is semi-variable cost? Semi-variable cost is basically also called a mixed cost. Means a cost that has both elements of fixed cost and variable cost. Means the cost that consists of variable cost and fixed cost is called semi-variable cost. Like electricity bill or telephone bill, where there are fixed rental charges, and the next is depending on the number of calls. The fixed line rentals cost is fixed. No matter you made any calls or not, this amount will remain fixed. But if you will make calls, then with the increase in number of calls, your bill amount will also increase. Means what is semi-variable cost? A cost that has both elements of fixed and variable. Okay. Let's check its behavior and a number of units. First of all, students, write the equation for total cost. What is total cost? Total cost. Total cost is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. Total cost is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. This equation will help us in numeric questions. Total variable cost. How can we calculate the total variable cost? Total variable cost is calculated as number of units multiplied by variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit multiplied by number of units will give us the value of total variable cost. Okay, let's say there is a semi-variable cost consists of a fixed cost element. Fixed cost is equal to, let's say, 10,000. And there is also another component of variable cost, and we are given with variable cost per unit, which is, let's say, 20 per unit. How would we calculate the total cost for different number of units? The first column would be units, which can be no unit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay, the next column is for total cost. I will calculate the total cost for 0 unit, 1 unit, 2 unit, but then you will calculate the total cost for 3 units, 4 units, and 5 units. Okay. For zero level of activity, how would we calculate the total cost? The formula for total cost is this. Total cost is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. Okay. Equal to total fixed cost is equal to 10,000, which is given in our question. This is the fixed cost, plus bracket start. What is the variable cost per unit? Variable cost per unit is 20. Multiply by, for how many units we are going to calculate the total cost? Number of units are 0. If we are producing no units or 0 units, there will be no variable cost. The cost will be only fixed cost. So the total cost would be equal to 10,000. Okay. If we are producing 1 unit, what would be the total cost? Is equal to fixed cost, which is 10,000. Okay. Plus bracket start. How many number of units we are producing? We are producing 1 unit. Multiply by variable cost per unit is 20. Multiply the number of units. This is the formula that I am using to calculate the total variable cost. Number of units multiply by total variable cost. This formula, which I am using in brackets, will give me the total variable cost. This total variable cost will be added in total fixed cost to get the value of total cost. So the total cost is 1020. Okay. Next, total fixed cost 10,000 plus bracket start. How many units we are producing? 2. Multiply by variable cost per unit is 20. It will give us total cost of 1040. Now calculate the total cost for 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, and send me answers in chat box. Let's see who can answer me first. First of all, for 3 units, calculate the total cost, which is semi-variable cost. Great. 10,060. 10,060, 80, and 10,100. Great. Great. Excellent. So we can write on the value equal to 10,000 plus bracket start. 20 is the variable cost per unit, multiply by, I can link the cell of number of units. 10,060. Good. Yes. Now we are going to calculate the cost per unit, because we have also to learn the chart for semi-variable cost per unit. How would we calculate the cost per unit? It will not be calculated for 0 number of units. It will start from when we are producing first unit, equal to total cost divided by number of units. The answer is same because we are producing only one unit. So this cost will be assigned to that single unit. For 2 units, I am copying this formula and applying on the rest of cells. This is the value of cost per unit. 10,040 for 2 units will give us cost per unit of 5020. 10,060 for 3 units, it will give us 3353. For 4 units, this value, please use calculator and confirm the values, whether the values are correct or not. Correct. Good. Okay. Let's draw the chart for semi-variable cost total. Okay. Selecting the cells, insert option, recommended charts, and this chart. Okay, this is the chart for total cost or total semi-variable cost. Okay, students, as you can see that the line is not starting from 0. This line is starting from 10,000, means for 0 number of units, the total cost is 10,000. Whenever in any cost, there will be a fixed element, the line will not start from 0. It will start somewhere at y-axis, because fixed cost is a cost that will be incurred if we are not producing any unit. Means at 0 level of activity, the total cost is 10,000. It will be start from upward if the fixed cost will increase. Means from where this line will start from y-axis, it completely depending on the amount of fixed cost. This line is starting somewhere at y-axis. If any line will start somewhere at y-axis, it means this cost have the element of fixed cost, means 0 level of at 0 level of activity, there will also be a cost. Okay, now we are moving on to draw the chart for cost per unit. The cost per unit chart for semi-variable cost will be almost similar to the chart we drew in fixed cost per unit. This one, it will be similar to that chart, but I will explain the difference between these two charts. Select the data, insert option, recommended charts, and click on your desired chart. Okay, the chart is coming. These are the two charts. The first one is for fixed cost per unit, and the second chart is for semi-variable cost per unit. Okay. Okay, students. As the semi-variable cost per unit also consisting of variable cost per unit, so the difference between x-axis and this curve would be little greater than the difference in fixed cost per unit, because which cost is diluted with the increase in number of units, the fixed cost per unit reduces or decreases with the increase in number of units. In semi-variable cost, there is also a component of fixed cost that will dilute or decrease with the increase in number of units. But there is also an element of variable cost per unit, which will not change with the changes in number of units. Per unit will not change. So if we are given the two parallel charts in exams, and we have to identify, or the examiner asks us to identify that which chart is of fixed cost per unit and which chart is of semi-variable cost per unit, then we will only observe the distance between this curve and x-axis. If the curve is closer to x-axis, then the chart would be treated as fixed cost per unit chart. If there is a little more difference between this curve and x-axis, then the chart would be treated as semi-variable cost per unit. You just have to observe the distance of curve with x-axis. Where the distance of curve with x-axis is minimum, then the chart would be treated as fixed cost per unit chart. If the difference is little higher, then the chart would be treated as semi-variable cost. Both charts would have the same type of curve because of fixed cost per unit. But the distance will determine which chart belongs to which cost. Okay, I hope you understand. Okay, next type is step fixed cost. Step fixed cost. Let's say we have a store and rent cost per store is equal to 10,000. And maximum number of units, per store means the number of units that can be stored in one store are 10. Okay, students, if we will have 1 unit, then we will need for one store and will cost us 10,000. If we will have 2 units, then we will need only one store. The cost of store would be 10,000. For 3 units, we will require one store only. For 5 units, for 10 units, up to 10 units, we will require only one store. But if we have 11 units, then we will require another store, and the total cost will increase from 10,000 to 20,000. But this cost will remain constant for next level of activity, which is for 12 units, for 15 units, for even 20 units, the total cost will be 20,000. If we will have 21st unit, then we will require 3 stores, and the total cost will again jump from 20,000 to 30,000. This type of cost, where the cost remains fixed for a certain level of activity, just like this cost, which is fixed for 10 units, and then increase with a certain amount for next level. This type of cost is called step fixed cost. Means the cost that increases in steps. Okay, no issue. I can explain it again. Okay. Let's say we have a showroom for cars, where in one showroom or one store, we can store 10 cars. Okay, got it? Okay. If we will have one car in store, or we will have one car, then we will require one store that will cost us 10,000. As the maximum number of cars that can be stored in one store are 10. So if we will have two cars, we will need only one store. So the cost will remain constant for even we have two cars. For three cars, we will need one store. For 5 cars, we will need one store that will cost us 10,000. We can write it 10,000. For 5 cars, the total cost is 10,000. For even 10 cars that can be stored in one store, the total cost would be 10,000. But what if we have 11 cars? If the store is made to accommodate 10 cars, if we have 11 cars, then we will have to get another store on rent to store the 11th car. If we will get another store on rent, then there will be now a cost of 2 stores, where per store rent cost is 10,000. For 2 stores, the cost will increase to 20,000. For 10 cars, the cost was 10,000. But if we have 11 cars, to store the 11th car, we will need another store, and the cost will increase from 10,000 to 20,000. Next store will also have the capacity of next 10 cars. So for 12 cars, we will require 2 stores that will cost us total 20,000. For 15, we will need only 2 stores. The cost will be 20,000. For even 20 cars, we will only need 2 stores, where the total cost will be 20,000. But what if we have 21 cars? What would we do for 21st car? We will have to get another store on rent that will increase our cost from 20,000 to 30,000. Okay. Number of stores. We are inserting another column of number of stores. For one car, we need one store, one. But for 11, we will need 2 stores. For 12, 2 stores can accommodate 12 cars. For 15, 2. For 22, but if there are 21 cars, then we will need the third store that will increase our cost by another 10,000. I hope you got the point. Got it? Thank you, Beta. Okay. Next column is for cost per unit. How can we calculate the cost per unit? We calculate it as total cost divided by number of units. Okay, again, we are calculating total cost divided by number of units. I can copy this formula for the rest of this. For 10 cars, cost per unit is 1,000. But when the activity level increased from 10 to 11, the total cost also increased from 10,000 to 20,000. That also increased our cost per unit from 1,000 to 1,818. As the cost will remain constant for next level of activity, our cost also starts decreasing with the increase in number of units. It went down to again 1,000 for the last unit of next level. For the last unit of first level, which was the 10th unit, the cost per unit decreased to 1,000. For the last unit of second level, the cost per unit again decreased to 1,000. You can see that the minimum cost or the floor value is 1,000. But with the increase of 1 unit from 20 to 21, our cost also increased from 20,000 to 30,000. That also resulted in increase in cost per unit from 1,000 to 1,428.57. Okay. This is the concept of step fixed cost, a cost that fixed for a certain level of activity, for a certain level of activity. Here, the certain level of activity was 10 unit. Okay. For a certain level of activity will increase and will then remain fixed again until another level of production or activity is called step fixed cost. Examples are store rent, supervisor salaries, as one supervisor can supervise a certain number of employees, let's say 5 number of employees. Up to 5 number of employees, we will require one supervisor. If the number of employees will increase from 5 to 6, we would need to hire another supervisor, so the total cost will increase by a certain amount. It can be an example of tire replacement, oil change, etc., etc. Now we are going to draw the charts for total step fixed cost and step fixed cost per unit. Select the columns, insert recommended charts, and you can draw any chart. I am drawing this. As you can see, the cost behavior is just like steps. That's why this cost is called step fixed cost. Total cost is just like steps. Means the cost is increasing in steps. That's why this cost is called step fixed cost. Now we are going to draw the chart for cost per unit. We are selecting the column for number of units, and with Alt option, we are selecting the column for cost per unit. Go to insert option, recommended charts, and draw any chart. I am drawing this. This is the cost per unit chart. As you can see in chart that the cost per unit for first unit is highest. It starts decreasing with the number of units and gets to minimum, went to minimum value for last unit of first level. The number of units are increasing. For 10 units, the cost per unit is at minimum level, which is 1,000. With the increase in number of units from 10 to 11, the cost per unit again increases with a certain amount, and then will again start decreasing and will come to at minimum level when the activity level reaches to 20. For 21st unit, the cost per unit again increases. We can also insert its label by adding the data labels. Yes, we can read the values more prominently. Please let me know if the concept of concept fixed cost and their charts is clear, so that we can move on to next topic. Great, thank you. Clear, good, good. Okay. Next concept is high-low method. First of all, let me clear you why we use or where we use high-low method. Whenever there is a cost, like semi-variable cost means the cost has both elements of fixed and variable. This high-low method is used to identify or to segregate the total cost into variable element and fixed element, because in semi-variable cost we have both elements of fixed and variable. When we are given with total cost and whenever we will need to segregate it into variable cost and fixed cost, this method is used to segregate the total cost into variable element and fixed element. Okay, let's check. High-low method is used to segregate the cost into variable element and fixed element. Means this method will help us to segregate our cost, total cost, into variable cost and fixed cost. How this method would help us to segregate or to calculate the variable cost. This method will help us to calculate first the variable cost per unit, as the method suggests that we will only use high level and low level. Means we will calculate the cost per unit as cost at high level of activity minus cost at low level of activity. Here is the example. This is the level of activity, which is in number of units. Number of units are 200, 300, 400, and their total cost for 200 units, total cost is 7,000. For 300 units, total cost is 8,000. For 400 units, total cost is 9,000. And the requirements of the questions are, the first requirement is calculate the variable cost per unit. We will calculate the variable cost per unit by using this formula. Okay. Variable cost per unit. We can solve this question in spreadsheet. There are different number of units. Number of units are 200, 300, 400, and their total costs are 7, 8, and 9,000. Total cost. Total cost is 7,000. 8,000 and 9,000. Now we are going to calculate the variable cost per unit. What is the formula to calculate the variable cost per unit? This is the formula. Cost at high level of activity. which is the high level of activity. Among these three levels, the high level of activity is 400 units, and the cost at high level of activity is 9,000. As the formula suggests, cost at high level of activity means we have to identify, or we have to use the cost at high level of activity. Among these three levels, high level is 400 and the cost at this high level of activity is 9,000. Okay. Minus cost at low level of activity. Among these three levels, the low level is 200 units and the cost at low level of activity is 700. Divided by high level of activity minus low level of activity. High level of activity is 400 units minus low level of activity is 200 units. Now we are going to calculate the variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit. How would we calculate it? Cost at high level minus cost at low level. I'm not using formula, I'm just writing the values. Cost at high level, 9,000. This is the cost at high level, 9,000. Minus cost at low level of activity. Here, low level of activity is 200 units and the cost is 7,000. Okay. Divided by high level of activity minus low level of activity means we will use the level of activity. We will not use in denominator the cost at high or low level of activity. High level of activity are 400 units minus low level of activity units are 200. Okay. Can you calculate the variable cost per unit by using these values? Equal to or let's calculate the difference in cost, which is 9,000 minus 7,000 divided by high level units are 400 minus low level units are 200. So we can get the value of variable cost per unit, which is difference in cost of 2,000 divided by difference in units, which is 200. So the variable cost per unit for this question is variable cost per unit is equal to 10 per unit. Please check the value whether I have calculated the variable cost per unit correct or not. Difference in cost divided by difference in units. Thank you, Anisha. Okay. What is the next step? The next requirement is we are required to calculate the total fixed cost. Okay, we can calculate the total fixed cost. What was the formula to calculate the total cost? Total cost was equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. By using this equation, we can calculate the total fixed cost. By rearranging this equation, we can calculate the total fixed cost. So the total fixed cost will be equal to total cost minus total variable cost. As the total cost consists of two elements of total fixed cost and total variable cost, if we will exclude one element from total cost, the rest will be the other component. So we will use this formula to calculate the total fixed cost. Total cost minus total variable cost. Okay. In this question, total cost, which total cost we will use to calculate the value of total fixed cost, as the method is high-low method. So we can use the total cost for high level, which is this 9,000, or we can use the total cost at low level, which is 700. This is up to us or up to you that which value you want to use it, but only use the total cost for high level or low level. You cannot use the total cost for any mid values. Total cost is equal to, I'm using the total cost for 400 units, which is the high level. So total cost is equal to 9,000. I will deduct the total variable cost for this level of activity, as we just calculated that the variable cost per unit is 10. As I am using the total cost for 400 units, so I will deduct the total variable cost for 400 units. How would we calculate it? We will calculate it as variable cost per unit 10 multiply by which number of units I will use, as I used the total cost for this level of activity. So I will use the number of units for which I used the cost, which is 400. So the total variable cost is 4,000. Among total variable cost is 4,000. So the total fixed cost will be equal to total cost minus total variable cost. Total fixed cost will equal to 5,000. First of all, we calculated the variable cost per unit by using high-low method, and then we wrote down the equation for total cost, and then we rearranged it to adjust for calculation of total fixed cost, and then we use this equation to calculate the total fixed cost. Total cost minus total variable cost is equal to total fixed cost. Okay, I'm giving you a question. Calculate the variable cost per unit and total fixed cost, and then we will move on. The next requirement, number of units. You are given with number of units with total cost. Number of units are 200, 250, 350, and 500. And another column, another level of 650 is also given. Total cost is 1,000, 1,250. Next is 1,400. Next is 1,700, and the last one is 2,200. You are required to use this data to calculate the variable cost per unit by using high-low method, and then try to calculate the total fixed cost. First of all, calculate the variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit. Let's see who calculated it first. Okay, 2.67. Anisha calculated it. 2.67. Variable cost per unit 2.67. Great. Sumera. Great. Two other calculated 2.66. Archana and great. And Sumera also calculated fixed cost, which is 460. Great, Sumera. Excellent. Okay. Let me calculate it. Difference in cost. High level of activity is 650 units. So the cost is 2200 minus low level is 200 units. So the cost will be 1000 bracket close divided by bracket start. High level unit 650 minus low level units would be 200. Okay. The cost per unit, great. 2.667. Excellent. Now we are going to calculate the total cost. Okay, we can calculate it here. Total cost is equal to, we are using the total cost for high level, which is 2200, and variable cost per unit is 2.667 multiplied by number of units are 650. So the total variable cost is 1733, and the total cost will be total cost minus total variable cost. The answer is fixed cost, which is 466. Great, where you calculated it. Okay. Let's move on to the other requirement, which is estimate the total cost if output is 350 units. Now we are going to calculate the cost for that activity level, which is not given in this question. We need to calculate the total cost for 350 units. Okay, we can calculate it. Our variable cost per unit was 10. Our fixed cost total was 5000. Now we will use this equation of total cost. This one. We can copy from here and paste it. Total cost. Total cost is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. In this question, we are given, or we calculated total fixed cost. Our total fixed cost was this one for our question, 5000. Sorry, 5000. Now we will add total variable cost. Okay, how can we calculate the total variable cost? As we have to calculate the total cost for 350 units. So if the variable cost per unit is 10, the total variable cost for 350 units would be 350 multiplied by 10 equal to 3500. So total cost will be equal to total fixed cost, which is 5000, plus total variable cost, which is 3500. So the total cost will be 8500 for how many units? For 350 units. This is the way that we can calculate the total cost for any level of activity if we are given with total fixed cost and variable cost per unit. Okay, now you will calculate the last requirement, which is to estimate the total cost if output is 600 units. Means you will calculate the total cost for 600 units. Just like I calculated the total cost for 350 units, now you will calculate the total cost for 600 units. Calculated. Where the variable cost per unit is 10. Variable cost per unit is equal to 10, and total fixed cost is equal to is equal to 5 was 5,000. Who calculate? Nisha 11,000. Okay, Nisha. Any others? Any other student who also calculated the total cost for 600 units? Okay. How would we calculate the total cost for how many units? 600 units. Units are equal to 600. Okay. How do we calculate the total cost? We add the total fixed cost and total variable cost to get the value of total cost. Total fixed cost is 5,000 and total variable cost for 600 units would be 600 multiplied by 10. Variable cost per unit is 10 and for 600 units it will be equal to 6,000. So the total cost will be equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. The answer is 11,000. Okay, students. Please let me know if the concept of high-low method and the calculation of total variable cost, total cost is clear or not? Clear. Good. Clear. Great. Okay. Next situation is also involved high-low method, but the situation can be mixed with step fixed cost. Like this question, an organization has the following total costs at 3 activity levels. The 3 activity levels are 4,000, 6,000, and 7,500. Total costs is also given for every level of activity, which is 10,800, sorry, 40,800, 50,000, 54,800. There are 3 levels of activities, and at all 3 levels of activities, we are given with total cost. This question is not as simple as we did this question, but the concepts are almost same. Okay, variable cost per unit is constant within this range. Means variable cost per unit at 4,000 units, variable cost per unit is same. For 6,000 units, variable cost per unit would same. And even for 7,500 units, variable cost per unit is not changing. And there is a step up of 10% in the total fixed cost when activity level exceeds 5,500 units. Means when the activity level will increase from 5,500 units, our fixed cost will increase, not variable cost, because variable cost per unit is constant within this range, activity range, only fixed cost. In this total cost, there is a mixed cost of variable and fixed cost. Okay, let us solve this question in Excel. Here we are given with a different number of units and their total costs is also given. Number of units in this question are 4,000, 6,000 and 75. 4,000, 6,000 and 7,500. Okay. Total costs are 40,800. Then total cost is 50,000. And the total cost is 54,800. 54,800. Okay. What is the condition in this question? Condition is if activity level would be greater than 5,500 units, fixed cost will increase by 10%. This is the situation in this question. Okay. If we see the total cost at 4,000 units, at every level of activity, the total cost consists of variable cost and fixed cost. Means at 4,000 level of activity, as the 4,000 level of activity is less than 5,500, its total cost will consist the fixed cost without 10% increase. As the level of activity of 6,000 is greater than 5,500 units, its total cost will consist fixed cost after 10% increase. Means in this level, the total cost means total fixed cost will be with 10% increase. For this level of activity, the total fixed cost will be 10% higher than its original level. The basic value or the original value is always treated as 100%. Means for this level of activity, total fixed cost will be at 100% level. For this level of activity, total fixed cost will have jumped by 10%, and the total fixed cost will be at 110%. As 7,500 units level is also greater than 5,500 units, its fixed cost will also be at 110%. But 4,000 units are as less than 5,500 units, its total fixed cost will be at 100%. Means there are 3 different level of activities, but the total fixed cost is not at same level in total cost at all 3 level of activities. For this sort of situation, we will first identify whether the level of activities are greater in after change or before change. As we can see in this question, that before change of a fixed cost, there is only one level of activity, which is 4,000. As we will use high-low method, so we will require at least 2 activity levels, and 2 activity levels in this question are after change or after increase of 10% of fixed cost. So for this question, the trick is that we will ignore the activity level before change, because this is only one level, and by using one level we cannot use high-low method. We can use high-low method for at least 2 level of activities. Here 2 level of activities are 6,000 and 7,500, and their total cost includes fixed cost at 110%. Normal usage of high-low method, we can get the value of variable cost per unit. In this situation, high level is 7,500 units and low level is 6,000 units. Because although the low level was 4,000 units, but we will not use, or we cannot use it, because at this level of activity, the fixed cost is not at the same level as at the other level of activities. We will ignore this level and we will use these two activity levels for the purpose of calculating the variable cost per unit. Okay, cost at high level is 54,800 minus cost at low level is 50,000 divided by high level units are 7,500 minus low level units in this question are 6,000. We will not use 4,000 level because at 4,000 level, the fixed cost is not at same level as the rest of activities. By using this formula, we can calculate the variable cost per unit. Please calculate it and let me know the answer. My answer is 3.20. Great, Anisha. Your answer is correct. 3.20. Great. Any other student? Nabila. Great, Nabila. Okay. Variable cost per unit is 3.20. Okay, now we will calculate the total fixed cost. The formula to calculate the total fixed cost is total cost minus total variable cost. The answer would be total fixed cost. What is the total cost? Total cost, we can use the total cost at high level, which is 7,500, or we can use the total cost at low level, which is 6,000 units. I am using the cost at low level. At 6,000 units, the total cost is 50,000. You can also use the cost at high level, means you can use 54,800 cost minus total variable cost. Variable cost per unit is 3.2 multiply by at 50,000 cost, the level of activity was 6,000 units. Total variable cost is 19,200. By deducting the total variable cost from total cost, we can get the value of total fixed cost. Check the answer, please. Good. Correct. Good. Okay. Now, the requirement of the question. What was the requirement of the question? The requirement of the question was to calculate the total cost at activity level of 5,000. What was the requirement? To calculate the total cost for 5,000 units. As we all know that if we are given with total fixed cost, which is 30,800, and we are given with variable cost per unit, which is 3.20, we can simply use the total cost equation, which is this. We can calculate the total cost. But in this question, there is some complication. As we used these two activity levels to calculate the variable cost per unit and to calculate the total fixed cost, when we will use these two activity levels, the total fixed cost will not be for less than 5,500 units. The total fixed cost was for greater than 5,500 units. Means this fixed cost will be used whenever we will calculate the total cost for greater than 5,500 units. Why we can use this total fixed cost for only greater than 5,500 units? Because we chose two activity levels that were greater than 5,500 units. Means by using the total cost, by using these two activity levels, we have already calculated the total cost at 110%. We identified the total fixed cost at 110%. We did not use the activity level of less than 5,500 units. We used the activity levels for greater than 5,500 units. That's why this total fixed cost is for greater than 5,500 units. If we want to calculate the total cost for less than 5,500 units, then how would we adjust this total cost to less than 100%? This cost was how many percent? This cost was after increase, so this cost was for at 110%, and we need to adjust it to 100% as we are required to calculate the total cost for 5,000 units which are less than 5,500 units, and for 5,000 units our total cost will be at basic level and there will be no step up in our total cost. Okay, we are going to adjust this cost which was calculated at 110%. We are going to adjust it at 100%. How would we adjust it? Calculated 30,800 divided by how many percent was this cost? This cost was 110%. So divide it by 110 and convert it at 100%. So multiply it by 100. What would be our cost? 28,000. Great. Total fixed cost would be 28,000. Okay, I'm using formula now. Equal to 30,800 divided by 110 multiply by 100. Great. This total fixed cost of 28,000 would be used if he asks us to calculate the total cost for any level which is less than 5,500 units. As we have to calculate the total cost for 5,000 units, we will use total fixed cost of 28,000 and we will add the total variable cost in it. That will be equal to, okay, that will be equal to what was the variable cost per unit? It was 3.2 multiply by, for how many units we are going to calculate the total cost? The level of activity is 5,000. So the total cost will become equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost, 44,000. Correct. Great. Anisha, you are working very well. Okay, this was the situation where the total fixed, there was an element of stepped fixed cost with the level of activity. If no, please. Is this clear? Clear, great. And other students, what about other students? Is this clear or not? Clear, great. Good. Okay. Now we are moving to another situation. We can also use high-low method when our variable cost per unit is changing. Means high-low method with changes in the variable cost per unit. As you can see the question, the following information relates to manufacture of product LL. Thank you, Nabila. Okay, the following information is given. Information is given for product LL. There are 3 level of activities, 200, 300, 400, and the total cost is also given. For output volumes above 350 units, the variable cost per unit falls by 10%. Note, this fall applies to all units, not just the excess above units. Means that this will apply to all units, not only the excess units. And the requirement of the question is to calculate the total cost of producing 450 units. Okay. Here in this question, there are 2 activity levels which are less than this condition, which is of 350 units. Means at 200 level of activity, the total cost will consist of original variable cost per unit. Even at 300 levels, as the 300 units are less than 350 units, the total cost will be at their original level, which is 100%. But at 400 units, the variable cost per unit will fall by 10%, means 8600 total cost. The total variable cost will not be 100%, it will be at 90%, as the cost will fall by 10%. Like the question, we will try to solve this question in spreadsheet. Units, total cost. Okay. How many units? 200, 300, and 400. 200, 300, and 400. And the total cost is 7, 8, and 86. 7,000, 8,000, and 8,600. Okay. Like the previous question, first of all, we will identify whether the activity levels are higher before the changes or after changes. As we can see in this question, that there are 2 activity levels which are less than 350 units, because for 350 units or greater than 350 units, variable cost will decrease by 10%. Just like the previous question, there are 2 activity levels which are before this change. Means at this level of activity, variable cost per unit will be at 100%. 300 units are also less than 350 units, so variable cost per unit will be at 100% level. But 400 units are greater than 350 units. It means the variable cost per unit will have reduced by 10%, and the variable cost will be at 90% level. As we will use these two activity levels at which the variable cost per unit or the variable cost is same, we will use these levels and we will ignore this level for the time being. Use these two activity levels and calculate the variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit. Okay. Could you please tell me what is the variable cost per unit? Yes. Anisha, 10 per unit. Great. Yes, I think it is correct because the difference in costs is 7,000 minus, sorry, 8,000 minus 7,000. Difference in cost is of 1,000 divided by difference in units is of 100. So the variable cost per unit is 10. Okay, move on to calculate the total fixed cost. How would we calculate the total fixed cost? Total fixed cost will be equal to total cost. We can use the total cost for 200 units or we can use the total cost at 300 units. I'm using for 200 units. Total cost is 7,000 minus, we will deduct the total variable cost. Variable cost per unit is 10 multiply by 200. Total fixed cost is 5,000. Great, Anisha, great. Well done. Okay. What is the requirement of question? The requirement of the question is to calculate the total cost for producing 450 units. We are going to calculate the total cost for how many units? For 450 units. As we can see that 450 units are greater than 350 units. This variable cost was calculated before change. Before change means this variable cost was at 100%. As the number of units are greater than 450 units, our variable cost will reduce by 10%. So the revised variable cost that will be used for greater than 350 units will be revised variable cost per unit will be equal to original variable cost per unit was 10 multiplied by, as the variable cost per unit will reduce by 10%. So the revised variable cost per unit will be 90%. You can also calculate it as variable cost per unit 10 minus, as the cost will reduce by 10%. So the 10% of 10 equal 10%. 10% of 10 is 1. So the discounted price would be 9, or reduced variable cost per unit will be 9. Now, as we have the relevant total fixed cost, which is 5,000, and relevant variable cost per unit, which is 9 per unit, we can use this information to calculate the total cost. Okay, total cost will be equal to total fixed cost, which is 5,000 plus variable cost per unit is 9 multiply by, for how many units we are going to calculate the total cost is 450. So the total cost will be 9050. Check this value, please. Great. Okay. In this situation, what if he asked us to calculate the total cost for, let's say, 250 units? What would be the total cost then? Try to calculate. total cost for 250 units. Hurry up. $7,500. 7250. Okay, let me check. As the number of units are 250, which are less than 350 units, so we will use variable cost per unit before change. Number of units are 250. As these units are less than 350 units, so we will use the original variable cost, means the cost before decreasing. So its total variable cost will be equal to 250 multiplied by 10, and total fixed cost will be equal to 5,000. Fixed cost is not changing, only the change is in variable cost. So the total cost will be 2,500 plus 5,000 equal to 7,500. Great, great, Sumera. Anisha also calculated the correct value. Great. Okay. This was all about high-low method. We covered the simple situation where there were no changes in variable or fixed cost. Then we covered when we were given the changes in fixed cost. And then we covered when we were given the changes in variable cost or variable cost per unit. Now, we are moving on another cost classification, which is cost classification by function. In organizations, we can divide the organization by major functions as the function of production, which is also called manufacturing function. And the other is non-manufacturing or non-production, or even sometimes we call it as non-factory cost. Means factory cost, production cost, manufacturing cost, all have same meanings. What is production cost? The cost incurred in manufacturing the product or goods. Means in production department, whatever cost will be incurred, that cost will be treated as production cost. Production cost is, we can simply say it as the cost of producing goods or products. Whatever cost we will incur in producing a product, that cost will be treated as production cost. Like if we are using material on producing goods, cost of material will be treated as production cost. If labor is working in production department, the labor cost will be treated as production cost. If there is any rent cost, utility cost, or any insurance cost, or any lubrication cost, means any cost that will be incurred in production department on producing goods, that cost will be treated as production cost. Okay, there are other costs as well that will be treated as non-production costs. The first cost or the first segregation can be Selling cost means advertisement cost, commission paid to staff, okay, discount cost, all costs that we incurred in order to get order from customers or to attract customers. This cost is treated as selling cost. And distribution cost, what is the difference between selling cost and distribution cost? Whatever cost we incurred in getting order from customer or to attract customer, up to getting order, the cost incurred will be segregated as selling cost. But once the order is received, then we will deliver this order to, or the goods to customers. In order to distribute goods to customers, the cost of transportation or cost of finished goods stock, store cost will be treated as distribution cost. Normally, we treat selling and distribution cost in same group. But if the question asks us the specific division or segregation on selling and distribution cost, the selling cost is the cost that is incurred to get the order from customer. And once the order is received, then the cost of transportation or finished goods store cost will be treated as distribution cost. Like we have delivery vehicles, the cost incurred on delivery vehicles will be treated as distribution cost. The next cost, non-production cost, can be administration cost, like your audit fee cost, your journal offices cost, journal managers cost. Okay, the cost of administrating the business activities, any cost that will be incurred in journal offices, like your HR department, like your accounts department. Okay, these costs will be treated as administration cost. Next is research and development cost. Research and development cost is also called pre-production cost. The cost incurred on designing the product or redesigning the product, or the cost on researcher's cost, means every cost that will be incurred in research and development department will be treated as research and development cost. Researcher's cost for research purpose, if we are purchasing any specialized data, that data cost will also be segregated as research and development cost. Means every cost that will be incurred in a research and development department to develop a new product or to design a new product, that cost will be treated as research and development cost. And the last cost is finance cost. Finance cost is basically interest cost. In order to get finances from banks, we need to pay interest on loans. The interest cost is treated as finance cost. Is it clear? Production cost, non-production cost. Cost incurred on producing goods is production cost, and cost incurred on other than production departments or on other than producing goods is called non-production cost. Thank you, Alicia. Okay. Next is the division of cost classification by nature. Okay, guys, we will cover this topic along with other topic in next class, inshallah. If you have any queries or questions, you can ask. We are winding up this lecture. I will share these notes with you along with Kaplan study text and Kaplan exam kit. In next class, we will cover a few topics remaining of this chapter, and we will also solve exam kit questions, which are exam style questions. If you have any query, do let me know, please. Okay. Bibi Nafisa asked me question, could you please advise how to proceed? Yes. Management will tell you, inshallah. I have joined by free class link today. Management will contact you. Hamzah Academy will contact you. Okay, any other question? Thank you. Okay, thank you, students. Goodbye. Where is Academy located? In Pakistan. Lahore. Thank you. Goodbye all.